Live and local from the Online Trading Academy studios, this is the Todd Herman Show on AM 770 KTTH. Streaming everywhere at KTTH.com.
Great pieces of news this year in Washington State as we have an opportunity to put fantastic judges on a Supreme Court that, in my judgment, is an absolutely rogue court, my judgment. We have a court that's decided that it writes the budget for schools. And I've heard every argument against this, but when you have the judiciary playing Marco Polo with the legislature, we'll tell you when you hit the number that we're thinking of. That means they're the ones actually writing the budget. We also have that same court who invented a way to make charter schools illegal the day before schools came about. And now there's a new lawsuit in front of the court that would once again make charter schools illegal. One of the judges that has an opportunity to sit on the Supreme Court if he's voted in is Judge Dave Larson, who's going to join me here. He's currently the presiding judge for Federal Way Municipal Court. Originally appointed to the seat in 2008, he's now serving his second full term after elections in 2009 and 2013. The judge and his wife, Debbie, of 29 years, live in Federal Way, where they raised two sons, Andrew and Joshua. And Judge Larson worked as a trial lawyer for 23 years before becoming a judge. He was ultimately rated AV preeminent by his peers, which, according to the Martindale-Hubbell, is the highest peer rating standard. It's a big deal. He's also a guy who has a deep and abiding love for the Constitution and our founding fathers. He joins us on Constitution Day. Happenstance, but certainly not a mistake. Judge, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated.
So the court is in the news again. I was reading an opinion piece stating that the voters of Washington State need to have an initiative to once again state that a progressive income tax is illegal in our state. Now, I went and read the state constitution, and the way I understand it is that we can tax, an income tax can be created, but it has to be at 1%. There's a cap on the amount of money that could bring in, and you cannot have it be progressive. It has to apply equally against every citizen. So is that a rough understanding of the way the Constitution works in that, Judge Larson?
Well, there's specific language in the Constitution that deals with taxation, and it basically says that all taxes shall be uniform on the same class of property. And there's other provisions, but basically what that means is that, in the way of my understanding, it's been interpreted in the past, is that any kind of progressive tax that would treat property differently, whether it's income or something else, would be repugnant to that particular aspect of the Constitution. So a progressive tax would not work, whereas if there was a flat tax, the argument would be that it's uniform, therefore it passes muster under that particular constitutional provision.
Should I be concerned that we are being told that we need to have a citizens' initiative to remind lawmakers that the law says what the law says?
Well, it's interesting you would bring that up on Constitution Day.
Yeah.
Especially, it's not the celebration of our state constitution, but if you start with Article 1, Section 1 of our own state constitution, it's all political power is inherent in the people, and government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed and is there to protect and maintain individual rights. The question is, how far have we gotten from that particular aspect of our constitution, and why should the people feel that they need to remind government of their own constitutional provision? On uniform taxes, et cetera. I think that it all goes back to are we as elected officials, whether it's a judge or a legislator or executive branch, are we servants or are we masters? Are the people citizens or subjects? And that goes back to really the fundamentals of our existence, and that's really a test on that.
Have you studied, Judge Larson, or read about a low trust society versus a high trust society?
No, I haven't.
So it's a theory I've been reading a lot about that that as powerful people start neglecting the law or themselves not following it, right? That it starts to come down into the citizen saying, wait, well, I'm watching this politician get away with breaking the law, or I'm watching this city decide they're going to be a sanctuary city, or I'm watching this person get a waiver from prosecution. I'm watching corruption occur, right? That, well, wait, if they're doing this, am I the sucker at the table that should be doing this? So we've been a high trust society, and our society has worked because we trust that you're going to follow the law. I don't want to get arrested. I don't want to go to jail. That's certainly a fear factor. But we all kind of trust that we're going to do the right thing. So citizens, I think, are beginning to say, wait a minute, I'm looking at, I'll give you an example. Hillary Clinton, it looks to me like she broke the law and other people would go to jail for that. I'm beginning to get a lot of people saying, hey, with all this sort of law breaking going on at the top, why should I follow it as a citizen? And that creates this low trust circumstance. Do you think that's overstated? Do you think that the corruption has gotten that bad back in D.C. that people need to begin questioning on that level?
Well, it depends on how you define corruption, but corruption would imply crookedness and things of this nature. Things can go south on us without being quote unquote corrupt. It could just be ignorant of the fundamentals of the way we're supposed to exist as a society in a free society. And the rule of law means that when I put my robe on, when I go into court, I have an obligation, I have a duty that I perform. But when I take that robe off and I go out into society, I have to abide by the same rules that everybody else does. I don't have any special treatment. I don't get any special treatment. That's the role I play. And from there, the leadership for the rest of society, that's supposed to be an example. Right. The rest of society. But if I as a judge or as another elected official can get away with things that other people can't, then all of a sudden you've created a rift and we're no longer equals. And the whole idea of it being some things that I think that were said that were self-evident about a couple hundred years ago, kind of become shallow and become this idea that we're created equal, kind of loses its luster.
Right. Yeah. So, and we can we don't need to get too far into DC, but I look at strange things like Hillary Clinton's chief of staff, who never declared herself a lawyer. Suddenly, when the FBI investigation is going on, the DOJ says, "Oh, sure, you can have privilege. We'll turn you into Hillary's lawyer. So now all your communications are privileged." That wouldn't happen for you or I, as I see it. Let's wind it back down to Washington State. What are the big issues that are going to face the court that's coming up that we need to make sure that we have responsible jurists that you foresee maybe coming in the next 3 or 4 years?
Well, and the actual legal issues there's all kinds of things you don't know what's going to come before the court. The biggest issue that faces things we were talking about is getting back to fundamentals. I've talked about this before on your show about Article 1, Section 32 of the state constitution, that a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is essential to individual right. Is essential to individual right and the perpetuity of free government. The idea that we've gotten so far away from fundamentals, both in how our court's supposed to operate and what it's supposed to do, we almost expect political results. In some cases, you read the law verbatim to people, and they get upset with you because it's been so politicized.
Really?
Yes, you can read portions of the law verbatim, and people get upset because it's almost this notion that people are entitled to a particular outcome based on political views rather than what the law is itself.
Yeah, and because I guess it's more common knowledge among this audience, I guess I look at the Second Amendment, right? I constantly have anti-gun people lecture me that I don't belong to a militia and therefore should not have a gun, right?
Right.
And yet, of course, that goes completely against the writings of the founders and the Federalists and non-Federalists. But that's an example of lay people. But does that happen in the legal profession that lawyers get upset?
This is a perfect segue because it'd be an example of if you spoke to somebody, and again, this is you'd just be very dispassionate about the law. But Article 1, Section 24 of our own state constitution makes it absolutely clear that your right to bear arms is an individual right, and it uses the term self-defense. And basically, our own state constitution specifically spells it out that it's an individual right. And if you told that to some folks, they would be very upset that you even said it, even though it's in reality. I could probably find it on here on my phone and quote it verbatim, but that's an example. And when it comes to guns, I think what's part of the problem is we're not spending enough time trying to figure out. We're looking at symptoms instead of treating the disease. What is making us wanting to kill each other? What is making us wanting to go after each other like we are? It's not about guns. It's about an indictment on our society as a whole.
Sure, and I guess we never turn that equation upside down and to say, wait a minute, why are guns so successful? And here's what I mean. 99.9999% of legal gun owners never commit a crime with it. How has this been so successful? Because with cars, it's much less successful. People commit crimes, minor and major, at a higher degree with cars. So those have become very politicized. See, that spooks me that people, even in the legal profession, would get angry by hearing the law actually recited to them. Because it makes me fear that on Constitution Day, there's people practicing who maybe don't hold those words so sacred, or as sacred as they should be held.
Right, and that's why I say it's been so politicized, and there's methods to change constitutions, but the bottom line is until it happens, as a judge, and just even me saying that, some people would attribute that I'm a certain political leaning because I quoted Article 1, Section 24. It's just Article 1, Section 24. That's all it is. It's the law. You can be a liberal, you can be a conservative, you can be anti-gun, you can be pro-gun, and it's still the same words.
Right. And so this is what has always impressed me about you, is that study of the law. And that I think the last time we had you on, you talked about when you put that robe on, you need, in a way, I guess you stop being Dave, right? You have to be Judge Larson, and that's not an accident. Have there been times in your career where you, this isn't a tough thing, but where you maybe wish the law allowed you to do something you couldn't do, but you absolutely had to stick with the law? Have you ever had that?
Every day.
Every day.
Oh yeah, there's times when you have to do it a certain way. Today I had explained to somebody, the law doesn't give me the exception for what you're asking for. I can't give that to you. I think you're right, but I can't give you that exception because the statute doesn't provide for it.
Yeah, so you're emotionally, you want to do what you want to do, but you're held by account to the law.
And in judicial elections, we spend a lot of time trying to find out what the judge's personal opinions are. And really the test for a judge is not what our personal opinions are. It's our ability to overcome our personal opinions to make decisions based on the law. That's the test for a judge, not what our personal opinions are.
And that's why I try to explain this, Judge Larson. Judge Dave Larson is with us. He's running for the Supreme Court, and certainly opportunity to so improve our court. That's why I try to explain it to people is this, that, on Constitution Day, when you are pulled over by police officers, happens to us sometimes, do you want the speed limit to be related to the cop's mood or what he had for breakfast or whether she had a fight with her husband before she pulled you over? Or do you want it to be what it says on the sign? Right. And I feel that we're in danger in the courtrooms of the judiciary of moving away from that.
Well, and I think that more so, and there's a lot of pressure put on courts and the political, people say the courts are political, and in some degree they are, but a lot of politics gets foisted on courts too. A lot of pressure. You follow the law and somebody doesn't agree with it, and all of a sudden you're an activist or you're something else when all you're doing is interpreting the law the way it was written. And people don't agree with it, and so all of a sudden you get all kinds of accusations because of your personal opinions. And it doesn't matter what our personal opinions are. It shouldn't matter. What matters is what the law is. Yeah. And if we don't, certainly we can put commentary on our decisions and things of that nature, but we still have to follow the law.
I'm so excited for you running. I just, I want you in the court.
Thank you.
I really do. And folks, I get to sit here with the judge and look him eye to eye. I wish you could see the regard he has for the law as he speaks about it. It's a blessing. It's really a blessing that you're running. How do people get in touch with you if they want to help?
Well, it's larsonforjustice.org is the website. It's Judge Larson at larsonforjustice.org is my email. 206-257-2075 is the phone number. Facebook, it's Judge Dave Larson for Supreme Court, and it's be more than welcome. It's just spreading the word, getting the word out there. It's difficult in judicial elections. We're kind of like I always say, we're the offensive linemen of government. We only get noticed when we jump off sides, and it's kind of what my goal though is to make the judiciary the most boring branch of government.
I love that. I love that. I'll second that. All right, Judge. It's always a real pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much. This is the Todd Herman Show. We are every weekday, 3 to 6 p.m. right here on KTTH. Now go be well, be safe, strong, and kind.